Hey, let's start talking about high scores. In this video, we're going to create at least the data side of a high score table. So I want to start off by creating a new script. This, I need to think about where it's going to live. I'm going to call it a high score manager. And a high score manager is going to live persistently. It needs to be probably on like a game manager, some object that sticks around between levels, and it'll keep track of the current high score table so that I can get that data and view it at any time. So in the high score manager file, usually in C# you want to have one class per file, but you can add more. I'm going to make another class here called high score. Actually, I'll make it a struct to represent that it is storing just plain old data. Let me think about what a high score needs. In my game, high scores, they're just going to be a name associated with a number. You type in your name and you have whatever score you achieved. So I'm going to want a string, and I'm going to want a score. Okay. I forgot, it's not going to let me initialize that here. So let me make a kind of initializer constructor. Structs don't want you to initialize on the variables themselves, and they don't want you to have a default constructor either. So I have to make something like this. A constructor that will be used to create high scores. Okay. Name is new name. Score is new score. Okay. There we go. So what I would like to have is really just a high score table is a list of high scores. So I'm going to make a bunch of these objects in a list. I'm going to make a new function. Let's say save. So we'll save our high scores in this function, and we'll make another function. You guessed it, load. Load, there we go. And then I don't need these as much. I think this is fine. We'll just create a list of these high score objects. There we are. It's going to be empty to start off with. Actually, when I run my start, I think this might be a good idea. Let's see, start. We'll probably want to load right away. So that seems right. Okay, so in our saving function, what we want to do is write this information out to a file. Now we don't have anything in there right now, so let me just throw down some placeholders, scores.add. Let's add some new high score. John is number 1 with a lot of points. And then we can add a bunch of losers. Alright. Okay, good enough. Now we have some high scores that are loaded up temporarily, and we'll talk about file loading after this. We want to save those high scores. So with Unity, because you're not guaranteed to always be, say, on a Windows system, could be you're on Linux, you're running this on a Mac or Android or whatever, you can't just hard code a place to save files that you can then expect to load later. What you're going to have to do is ask Unity for a safe location. So Unity has an application.persistent data path, and this is a string that tells you where you can store data and expect it to be there next time you run the program. This is a user data path, so the user has access to this. They can read it, they can write to it, so you should probably be mindful of that, that your user could mess around with things, delete files or whatever. So let's just log this so that we know exactly where we are in the file system. Persistent data path. There we are. And we need to call this save function. So I'm just going to call it once in here and get rid of this later. Okay. And then I can try it out. I want my game manager to have a high score manager, and then we can start it. Okay, so in my console or down at the bottom you can see the message come up. Persistent data path tells me that it's in this hidden folder under my user directory. App data, local load, default company, tank battle, so it's got the name of my my program in there. And what I'm looking for here is I'm making sure it does not end with a /. So if I'm going to describe a file, I'm going to have to put a / on the end of that string, and then I can append my file name. Okay, so there's my data path. So the save file is going to be application.persistent data path plus a / and then the name of the file I want to use. So let's just say HighscoreSave.txt. That way we can look at it and read it. Okay, and so we have talked in a previous course about using the stream writer object in order to write out to a file, and that's what I'm going to use here. Let me make sure I have access to that using system.io, and then I have the stream writer. So I can specify the path, so this save file is where I'm going to write to, and then when I'm all done, writer.close, and in the middle I just want to go through all of my lists and then print it all out. So they are scores, and I want to write writer.write line. So I'm just going to print each of these out onto a separate line. So first it's going to be scores i.name, so the name will come first, and then I'll append. We should have some sort of separator or some way of knowing the difference between a name and the score that comes after it. We could put in characters that are not allowed in a name, but you're going to have to enforce that. For now, I'm going to do, let's see, maybe just like a vertical pipe. Okay, there. So let's test it out and make sure that our file gets generated properly. Alright, it ran, and now it tells us I need to look through my file system for this file. Let's see. C users j.dearborn. And then there is an app data folder. I said before that it's a hidden folder. It's kind of faded out here. If you don't see it here, you can still type it into the address bar. You could in fact copy this whole address and paste it in here, this whole path. Or you can go to View and make sure that Hidden Items is checked so that you'll see the hidden folder. It is in local low, default company, because I did not name my company in the project settings in Unity. So it's in there. Tank battle. Tank battle. And then HighscoreSave.txt. That looks like the one. So it created it and it's got my values in there. In the next video, we will talk about loading these high scores back into your program.